Lauren, thank you so much for joining us today to talk to Grace Papers. In your own personal experience, you've had 2 children since you've been at Australia Post.
I have, yes.
2 maternity leaves.
Yes.
Returned to work in different capacities in each one. Tell us a bit about your experiences.
So my husband and I actually both grew up in Hobart in Tasmania, and we both moved to Melbourne together, started our careers in Melbourne, and then we had our first child in Melbourne. After a few months, I realised it's bloody hard work with a baby with no family support around. So I started having these conversations with my husband to say, look, I really want to go home. I want to go back to Tasmania. I want to have my mum around. I want to have your mum around. I want to have family around to help support us. And my original thinking was I'd have to quit my job at Australia Post and I would have to find something else in Tassie. However, I then sort of thought to myself, well, why couldn't I do my job in Tasmania? At that time, I was working as a talent and leadership consultant within Australia Post. So I went to my manager and basically said to him, look, we want to move back to Tasmania for personal and family reasons, but I still think I can offer Australia Post a lot. Do you think we could make something work here? And together we came up with a plan which worked really well both ways. So I was able to work from Hobart and with a bit of travel back to Melbourne, and that has continued.
What advice would you give to other women who are thinking about asking for something a bit outside the box effectively in terms of their return to work?
Yeah, it's about developing that business case. You've really got to be quite clear on the value that you're going to be able to add to the organisation. So think really carefully about what that value is and just make it a no-brainer for them. So don't give them the room to say no. Prove to them that what you're gonna add is too good for them to say no.
Yeah. How did you communicate your pregnancy to your manager the first time around?
Well, the first time round, my manager was a mother herself. She was actually a single mother of 2. So in fact, it wasn't a difficult conversation at all, and was probably something that she was expecting in a way, because I'd had those open conversations with her before to say that family is something that's certainly on the cards for us in the near future. So yeah, for me it wasn't a difficult conversation. I had the conversation very early, and it was a really pleasant experience.
And second time round?
Second time round, yes, look, similar. I had a different manager, but she was also a mum, and in fact she was about to go on maternity leave. So that was, a nice kind of sharing moment. But actually, there was also a missed opportunity there for me, because my manager was going on maternity leave. She'd asked me to step into her role.
And what role was that?
That was the head of leadership development at Australia Post. And it was a role I would have loved to have done, but I actually decided that I wouldn't put my hand up for that role because I knew that I was going to be going off on maternity leave in 4 or 5 months' time, which in hindsight I think was a big mistake. And it probably wasn't until I was on maternity leave. In fact, I can tell you the exact moment one night as I was breastfeeding, flicking through Lean In, and I had that aha moment of, oh my goodness, why didn't I put my hand up? Why didn't I step forward? Why didn't I take that opportunity and take on a leadership role? Albeit 6 months, I still think I would have learnt a lot, and I still think I probably could have offered, the team a lot.
What sort of gendered expectations have you, as a couple, faced in you being the primary career person and your husband taking on more of that flexible role, caring for your children?
Yeah, do you know what? I think it's actually been more difficult for my husband than for me. I do believe that it is becoming more acceptable for women to take on that lead career role. And I do think that there is an increasing amount of support for women who choose to take on that role. I don't necessarily see the same level of acceptance and support for men who are choosing to take on the parenting role. For us in particular, I think there's, my husband Lucas, he does deal with some challenges around, justifying the fact that I'm the one, who is probably first and foremost the career-focused one, and he is much more the primary caregiver.
There's a lot of bias that goes around, I guess, in terms of our attitudes towards mothers and not bringing them back into the workplace. But I think you've proven that you can be all and so much more after you've had children. You won a state title.
Yeah, that's true. I did. I won the Tasmanian 200 metre state title after having Frankie, my second child. When I had Frankie, I really wanted to get back into my health and fitness, and athletics is what I know and what I love. So I got back into my running, and fortunately it came back to me very quickly. And I think of the successes that I've had in athletics, which some when I was younger included representing Australia at junior level, but this one was by far the most rewarding, and I think that was because I was able to compete against much younger women, but also, and most importantly, to have my two girls on the sidelines and my husband there watching.
Tell us about the Stall Gift and what you have managed to achieve.
So the Stall Gift is one of probably the most famous foot race in Australia, and predominantly the focus in the past has been on the men's race. It's the men's race has been the richest race in Australia, and something that struck me was the fact that the men's race was worth $60,000 and the women's race was worth $6,000. At the time, I thought, look, this isn't right, and a few people sort of said, oh, who's the major sponsor of the Stall Gift? And it's actually Australia Post. So it's a little bit of a tricky situation, but I actually ended up sending an email straight to two of our executive general managers who I felt were sort of co-responsible for this particular area. And it was a pretty strong email, I must admit. Perhaps not one that my manager and manager's manager would have approved had I took it to them first. But I didn't actually take it to them first. I just sent it directly because I actually knew that it would perhaps it might get washed down a little bit. And then I heard nothing for a couple of weeks, and I thought, oh. And then I finally fessed up to my manager, and he said, "Oh, okay." He said, "I'll send it through to me." And so I sent it through to him, and he said, "I can't believe you sent that." Shortly after that, I then got a phone call from one of the executive general managers' PA saying that he wanted to meet with me. And at that point, I thought, oh no, is this going to be good or is this going to be not so good? And I went along and I met with him, and we had a great discussion. And yeah, he wasn't actually aware of the disparity, and he was really supportive. And I think from there, that's where we really got to see the changes. And so this year, for the first time, Australia Post actually pulled out of the main sponsorship and just took on sponsoring the women's race, so that the women's race is now worth $60,000 in line with the men's race.
I think for all women, thank you for that.
Oh, no.
Hopefully some of the other sports can follow suit.
I hope so.
Thank you, Lauren. Thanks for joining us today and for all of your incredible insights, and of course, all the work that you're doing in advocating for that change.
Thanks, Prue. It's been a pleasure.